Back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on TalkTV. It's only a few days away now, the Coronation. Just talked to Donald McLeod, they're up in Scotland. They're looking forward to it, as of course they should be. If you don't want to take part in it, you don't have to. It's not compulsory. I really don't think people should go and demonstrate, though, even though some say, oh, it's their right to do so. Laura Dodsworth is here. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
You'd probably say it is their right to demonstrate, but, you know, I just think it's a bit rude.
Oh, you always think you know what I'm going to say, and now you're provoking kind of psychological reactance effect to me, where I want to disagree and be contrary. I don't really know. I mean, I think it's not a good day to protest, is it? It would be like the Queen's funeral or something. It's not a good day to protest. No. But it is their right, as long as they do it peacefully and don't get in the way. Could it be a quiet protest in a back street that nobody sees?
I think that would be okay, or even, but I just think it would be very kind of un-British to just hold up horrible signs or shout horrible things or throw things. You know, I just think it's wrong.
Hey, I'm an anti-monarchist and I agree with you.
Yeah, well, I just think it's not very British. But anyway, what do I know?
Talking of British,
yes.
Please, can I be your May Queen and will you be my Green Man?
Yes.
I would like to call for a revival of our ancient English traditions.
Yes.
Because
and
yesterday...
you will think that I don't know what a May Queen is, but of course anybody who is worth their weight in 1970s rock and roll will know that it's a line from a Led Zeppelin song.
Oh, really? Well, you've got one up on me there.
It's just a spring clean for the May Queen.
Oh, OK. Well, I'm really glad that you know what the Maypole is and the May Queen from Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
So that's good.
I was at Nebworth.
Your youth was not wasted.
It was not.
Mine was spent dancing around maypoles, weaving the ribbons. Yeah, where I grew up, we always had a maypole on May Day. And, you know, I was talking to a 12-year-old girl yesterday, Georgia, and she said she'd never heard of the maypole. She'd never seen maypole dancing. She'd never done maypole dancing. And I thought, oh my goodness, you know, this really is a sign of the times. I think, you know, we're such a tolerant, welcoming, encouraging nation about other cultures and traditions while we're leaving our own behind. And it's such a fun tradition. It's one of our most ancient festivities, May Day.
It's a bit pagan-like, isn't it?
Well, it's totally pagan. It's not just pagan. Don't forget, it also became the day for workers internationally. But before that, it's an ancient day of festivities. People would do hand fasting. Yeah. That's where they make their commitment to somebody, dance around the maypole.
Hand fasting?
Yeah. It's the day that is between spring equinox and summer solstice. So it's supposed to mark the beginning of the summer. It's a day of life, fertility, summer. It's a great
But when you
day.
say hand fasting, is that something you do, or is that just what you call it?
That's something that people would do where, you know, the tradition in the Church of England where people's hands are bound together, that has an older pagan... No. Do you not know that?
I don't know about that.
OK, so that has an older pagan tradition. It's from hand fasting where people's hands are bound together to signal their commitment to each other.
Oh, I see.
So it's like a commitment
ceremony. So you're literally tied to somebody? Blimey.
Better than the ball and chain, Mike.
I thought the Catholics were weird.
At least you can cut through ropes. It's not iron chains, is it?
No, exactly right.
But there were some great celebrations. I mean, I asked on Twitter if anyone was still dancing around the maypole. Somebody sent me a great picture of May Queen and Green Man in Hastings. Like they had a really fun procession.
Yeah, they do that. They do Jack on the Green down there.
Yeah, they do.
Which I think was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. May Day.
Yeah. Well, I happened to know it was May Day yesterday because I got held up by the dreaded trade unionists walking around banging drums and playing trumpets when they should have been working.
Well, to be fair, it's not just a pagan festival. It has become Workers' Day. You know, you'll have seen in France there was total mayhem. You know, 1 million people.
May Day mayhem. Yeah,
May Day mayhem. They were marching for because the pension age has been raised from 62 to 64.
I mean, imagine that.
Good for the French. Good for the French. They still stand up for their rights.
I don't think it's good that you set fire to things.
That's just a few people deliberately stirring up violence at the protest. And let's not forget, you know, in France, there'll be a couple thousand people doing that. 1,000 to 2,000 people doing that, compared to 1 million people marching peacefully. And in France, they have the worst anti-protest police in the world. You know, they're out there with tear gas, rubber bullets. They're really, really brutal. Yeah. I've got a lot of respect for the way the French keep facing that down every time they want to argue for their rights. Yeah. And it's the day for it. It's Workers' Day, so well done the French. Unlike the May Day mayhem in London, where we had the opposite. We had Just Stop Oil stopping workers from getting to work. So, you know,
there's not that many people going to work on a bank holiday Monday. And in fact, the picket line that was at the Guy's Hospital, there was 2 people on it when I came into work. We sent somebody down to see them, and they'd already gone. So I presume they'd gone to the May Day march, and now it's May Day marching for people who are on strike.
That's ridiculous. Millions of people are at work on May Day. All the shops,
there was
petrol
nobody
stations.
Here. There was nobody in London.
Everybody's working. I mean, I probably went to 3 shops myself yesterday. They were all open.
Oh yeah, all the working class people are working, but all the middle class people are not working.
Right. So all those working class people who need to get to their jobs, earn money, feed their families, stuck behind Just Stop Oil, who we know from leaked information about their training sessions. They're currently aiming to get 1,000 people protesting every day in 50 marches around the country, trying to grind cities like London to a halt. And this just
too late. It's already happened.
It just hits workers and ordinary people where it hurts.
Yeah.
It's the most anti-working class, anti-human movement ever.
Yes. Well, of course, they haven't even got the wherewithal or the capacity or the stamina to do that for the rest of the year, because, like all, kids who have a good idea, they do it for about 5 minutes and then they go, oh, I don't think I want to do that tomorrow. So they won't do it for, every city in Britain, because hardly any other cities get affected. There's only really places like Bristol, I think, where they've also done things. It was where they started spray painting cars the other day. This vehicle kills kids, and, climate change, murder and all this kind of rubbish. But apart from London, you don't see them in the north of England very much. You don't see them in Scotland very much. They just all kind of come in. They all come in on the train from Tunbridge Wells, don't they?
I hope they're going to run out of steam or run out of fuel. But, sometimes these people can run on their lunacy and their
zealotry. Well, they're very well funded, unfortunately.
For a very long time. They're holding training sessions, aren't they? Trying to encourage people to keep going. I think what will be hard for them is they're really having to face off public disapproval and public contempt.
Yes.
Buses were honking behind them. Poor motorists, people trying to get to work. They're not getting enough help from the police. I don't think any arrests were made in London yesterday.
The police are still not policing properly in London, it seems to me. They did it right in Liverpool, the Merseyside police, when they took on the people who were trying to stop the Grand National. That was proper policing of these idiots. They just put them in handcuffs and led them away. That's what you need to do, not just stand there watching them, It's ridiculous, but I think the only way we're going to stop them is to actually start prosecuting the people who are funding them and saying, you're funding criminal activity, that is against the law, so we're going to not only take the money, we're going to charge you as well.
Well, that might make sense for illegal activity.
They're breaking the law, so it's illegal activity, right? Must be.
Look at the contrast between London, where you've got people trying to stop workers from getting to work, and France, where 1 million people actually mobilise against something which Macron has pushed through without really a democratic mandate. Such a difference. Something's gone very, very badly wrong with our protests in this country. It's dominated by fringe lunatics, I think. The answer to that might be they're not eating enough meat, Mike.
It could well be.
Controversially.
It could well be.
I'm afraid that mental health problems are linked with diets which are vegetarian or vegan. This isn't a one-size-all rule to fit all. It doesn't. But there is a correlation there. And yet, it's pushed on us all the time with things like meat-free Fridays, courtesy of the Church of England in Lent. Astonishing suggestion recently. Not for Jesus, but for the environment. Veganuary.
Yes.
Look at the increasing ranges of vegan food in supermarket aisles. Still there. No one's buying it. It's always well-stocked.
Funnily enough, when I was in France recently, that wasn't the case. In France, there's hardly any vegan food or any vegetarian food. If you look into a supermarket in France, the only vegetable stuff you'll find is in where the vegetables are. There's no vegan section. There's no vegetarian section. I went into a McDonald's in France and they only had one vegetarian option.
Good for the French, you see. I've got a lot of admiration for the French. They take their food too seriously. They're not eating all that. For a start, it's often processed, okay?
It's not good for you, an awful lot of it.
A lot of it's not good for you. But something which I think is really encouraging is that scientists are now pushing back against this idea that we should all be going vegan or meat-free. You might know Sadiq Khan chairs the C40 group. That's cities which are collaborating in a move towards being more environmentally friendly, in inverted commas, and achieving sustainable UN Agenda 2030 goals. And one of them is that we're all going to eat pretty much no meat. Their ambitious target is we're vegetarian, I think, by 2030, or really reduce our meat
Yeah, but
consumption.
that's as mad as his clean air policy, isn't it?
All of it's mad. All of it's mad. But the problem is that when people want to achieve these kind of ideological goals, they weaponise science in their favour. So they pull out these studies that show, oh, if you eat red meat, it increases your cancer risk. But they don't look at everything else around the diet. For instance, that people are eating their meat in a pasty or that comes out of a processed box or fast food. No.
Or it's mechanically recovered.
Or it's, let's not think about it. We all enjoy a sausage roll or a pasty sometimes, don't we? But no, 1,000 scientists have come out against this move to push us all towards being vegan in the Dublin Declaration. It was reported on in the Telegraph yesterday, I think, saying that livestock farming is too important for human nutrition and for the environment, and we should not be cutting it down or doing away with it. There are 3 billion people in the world who have unmet nutritional needs because they don't get enough meat and dairy.
Right.
It's only from a very kind of privileged Western middle-class position that you can even talk about being vegan. Most people in the world would love more meat on their plates. But I thought this was really encouraging that 1,000 scientists around the world, including from UK universities, are now pushing back on what is essentially a very ideological and misplaced campaign to turn everyone vegan.
Yes, it is misplaced, but how about this? This is good from Viv, who says, I'll run down the street naked if you read this out. I've been vegetarian for 50 years and can assure you I'm not dead. Some of the biggest, most powerful beasts who have walked the planet ate plants. Yeah, they did, but that was shortly before they became extinct.
What did I just say about vegetarian and vegan diets being correlated with mental health problems? You go run down the street naked.
Well, if she wants to run down the street naked, that's entirely down to her.
Sure, Lady Godiva rode horseback naked, didn't she? But that was about taxes.
It was, and quite right too. So, back to the maypole, though. There used to be a maypole, I'm pretty sure, in most kind of towns, didn't there? They used to be able to find it. My recollection of being a kid and sort of going into villages around the country and finding maypoles, and sometimes you'd see people using them. But now it's more associated for me with kind of Morris dancing, because they normally do a bit of a maypole dance as well, don't they?
Well, do you know what? Next year, hopefully I'll still be coming in next year, Mike. Let's put up a little maypole in the studio.
I never make plans that far in advance, as they say.
No, except when there's a maypole at the end of it, maybe we should. You can be the green man, I'll be the May Queen. We'll dance around it. Steve, your producer, was talking about the Wicker Man. We can stick him in a wicker cage.
Yes, that's a bit worrying, the Wicker Man. Quite a weird film, that, isn't it?
Well, that is just a story. That's just a story. Yes, so the village I grew up in, I went to a C of E school, little village school. We had a maypole. We danced around it every May, and it was really good fun. The only thing that wasn't fun about it was you had to hold boys' hands when you did country dancing. And at that age, I wasn't too keen on holding a boy's hand. Do you remember that, when you absolutely cannot bear to hold hands with somebody of the opposite sex when you're 7, 8, 9?
Oh no, horrible. Horrendous.
Ruins the whole thing. It was always sweaty. It was always a sweaty hand as well. I mean, now I'd be just grabbing the men's hands. Come on, swing me around the maypole. But not then. Not then,
exactly right. Let's talk about Novak Djokovic, because apparently he's going to be able to play in the US Open this year.
Well, the US hasn't been able to keep its absolutely bonkers COVID mandates going forever, it seems. On May the 11th, the US Biden administration is ending the vaccine mandates for international travellers, but also importantly, let's not forget federal workers and federal contractors, because they didn't just say you couldn't go to the US, they said you couldn't work for the US if you weren't vaccinated. Now, last year, Novak Djokovic won Wimbledon. He then went on to win the Australia Open. He wasn't allowed to go to the US Open. And if you remember the Australia Open before, there was that wrangle with their border force.
Well, he got in and then he got kicked out, didn't he?
Yeah. So he's become this really polarising figure. A lot of people really enjoyed, I think, mocking the fact that he couldn't get into his sporting events. And I think it's
They've all gone very quiet, those people.
Yeah, it's important to remember, though, that was the point, because exactly what was being harnessed was social norms.
Yeah.
You cannot forget that these vaccine mandates never had a scientific basis.
No.
The UK government's Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee could not wring a scientific explanation out of the UK government. There was no scientific basis, because the vaccines never stopped you from either catching the virus or transmitting
it.
What they could do was mitigate the symptoms.
And when that became clear, they said, well, let's just do it anyway, because in the end, you're safer, better off if you have it, which was another bizarre sort of shift of policy, wasn't it?
It was, and I think that we will come to look back on this time as a really dangerous interference in informed consent, because your informed consent for any sort of medical intervention should be based on the risk and benefit to you and not society. Very bad things have happened in societies when things are done for collective benefit. Now, vaccines do serve collective benefits, but because they help the individual, we have informed consent. This was different. The COVID jabs were different, and you have to remember, because there was no scientific basis for